I'm Rebecca King Ferraro.
And I'm Michael Sean Breeden, and you're listening to Conversations on Dance. Today on Conversations on Dance, we are joined by Shohei Iwahama, dancer with Ballet Trockadero de Monte Carlo, a company affectionately known as the Trocks. We talked to Shohei about his bold decision to move to the United States, why he stepped away from dance before joining the Trocks, and what makes the company's history and identity as an all-male comic ballet company so unique among dance entities in America.
If you're in the Houston area, come see the company perform at Performing Arts Houston on Tuesday, January 23rd. Get tickets at performingartshouston.org.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I think this is our first ever night podcast, so that's a fun change for us. But we're really excited to have you on and joining us. I assume you rehearsed today, right? So you're joining us at the end of your day.
Yeah, so we rehearsed from 10 to 6, well, 10 to 5:30 today.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I got home and took a shower and let's setting, before
This is
dinner.
your rest time, so we appreciate you taking time to be with us.
Oh, no problem.
Well, we always like to just hear with a guest that has not joined us in a previous episode, like the full journey. So we're going to go back to your early training days. Like what first kind of got you into dance or like the arts in general? What kind of gave you that artistic desire?
Yes, so it's kind of a long story. But my parents are musicians. My mom is a pianist. She taught piano. My dad, he used to play the flute in an orchestra, and he used to tour with ballet companies as well. I think it was even before I was born. So, and my sisters, they also played violin and flute, and I myself actually played the cello as well. But my sisters were taking dance classes. So when I was maybe 2 or 3, I was actually in dance, but like doing changements and stuff. Like I had no idea what I was doing, but I just loved dancing in general. But one day, I think I was 4. All of a sudden I told my teacher that I wanted to quit because I didn't like the bar exercises. So I left dance once and started playing the cello when I was, I believe, 9. And that's what I was doing for a long time.
Wow.
But when I was 14, I believe, one of my classmates, his parents were ballet teachers. So I went to see his ballet recital and I saw him on stage and I thought it was really cool. And yeah, I thought that's something that I really wanted to do. And I knew that was something that I wanted to do, like more than playing the cello or doing, other things. It just clicked. And that's how I started my dance training or ballet training. But my sisters, they didn't really do classical ballet. They did modern dance. So like after 2 or 3 months, I was like, well, I kind of like miss seeing the more contemporary and modern, like with more freedom. And I actually switched my studios to the modern dance studio that my sisters used to go to. And, I had a lot of fun. And when I was 17, 18, I started placing like top threes in our like nationwide competitions in like a high school category.
Wow.
And my teacher suggested me to apply for this grant by the Cultural Agency of Japan. I don't remember what it was called, but like a government grant. And she was like, well, there's not a lot of high school students who apply because they don't want to take a leave of absence to go study abroad. So that was actually for to study outside of Japan. And I applied and I got lucky. And that's how I came to the United States for the first time when I was 18.
Wow. That's so cool.
Yeah.
How do you feel that your understanding of music maybe has helped you in your dancing, maybe your early training and then as a professional as well?
For sure, like I think I am really good at figuring out counts. Some music, some scores, it's kind of weird. It's not always like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Sometimes
Right.
there's like 12, there's like an extra two counts. But also I would say like the flow of music, sometimes it slows down and like for example, my husband, he is also a dancer, or used to be a dancer as well. Um, he is really smart, but when it comes to understanding like how the music slows down, sometimes like he was like, "How do you count it?" I was like, "Well, because for me, I can kind of see the notes,
Like
like
on the
Mhm.
how it
page
would be
almost.
written." Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
so like I'm able to figure out stuff like that. So I think it definitely
Right.
came in handy having the music background.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Ah, I'm so jealous. I wish. I mean, it does. That sounds like such a boon to one's career. That sounds like a wonderful thing. I guess
But
I'm wondering now. So once you came to America and you were furthering your training, what kind of steps were you thinking you wanted to take professionally? Where did you see yourself going? What were some of the companies maybe that you were hoping to be a part of?
I actually didn't really have a clear goal when it
Mhm.
comes to, coming to the United States. So since I was little, I had I guess like I would say like American dream. I wanted to study in the States and live in the States, like watching TV shows like Full House, 90210 back in the day in Japan. So I was
Mhm.
like, I want to live there. So and also having the grant was a great opportunity. So I just decided to go to the A. Lee School in New
Mhm.
York City uh, because I didn't really know a lot of schools in the US. But I had a friend who actually went to the A. Lee School, so that's how I decided on which school to go to
Mm,
uh, without having a clear vision in the future. But I mean, I wanted to become a professional dancer for sure. Um,
Mhm.
but so I was there for 1 year in their independent study program. Uh, my parents are not very wealthy, so without having scholarships or grants, like there was no way I would have been able to continue my education in
Right.
the States. So after finishing that year back in 2007, I believe, I went back to Japan and graduated from high school because I was taking a leave of absence for a year.
Right.
But I was like, I want to go back to the States.
right.
But no money. So I Googled um, cheapest community college with a dance program.
Mhm.
Uh, and this community college in Rock Springs, Wyoming popped up. Um, Very cheap tuition. I would say, I think it was like $2,000 per semester and $900 for the dorm
Wow.
Wow.
per semester. And they provided scholarships for international students. So I applied and I also got their scholarships. And once I
Wow.
got there, um, I found out I was the only dance major there.
Wow. Oh my God.
Yeah, but they had a really good musical theater program. So there were
Mhm.
students in their dance classes.
Okay.
Uh,
Right.
but when it comes to the level of, you know, dancing, um, it really wasn't nothing compared to the A. School, of course. But
Right.
Right.
I just wanted to be somewhere where the studio was available. So I went there for a semester. And towards the end of the semester, we had a guest artist came from, so he was a professor from some Houston State University, which
Mhm.
was
Mhm.
in Texas, an hour north of Houston, Texas. in Huntsville, Texas. And I told him I was looking for somewhere that I can transfer to, and he called his boss, who was the chair of the department, and he got me scholarships right away. And from the following semester, I was in Texas, which is, I never imagined myself being in Texas, but yeah, things happen.
Well, all of this just it just sounds like all of it was like an immense leap of faith. Like you had an idea of what you wanted. I mean, you wanted to dance in America, but you were just like, I'll do, one like baby step at a time. Like that's so impressive that you had like, just that level of faith. Like, how do you think, is that just sort of like a kid's view of the world, or like, is this just something intrinsic to you? Like, how did you find that?
I think I have always been this way. I am really spontaneous when it comes to something that I discover and decide that I want to do something. Like an example would be, it's not related to dance, but when I was in elementary school, I was seeing my sisters getting their ears pierced. But in our family rule, you had to wait until you go to high school. Because in middle school or junior high school in Japan, there are rules in school that you're not allowed to wear any, accessories like earrings or anything. But I was in elementary school, so they didn't really have the rules. So I did some research, and this is a safe thing to do, and pretty much I presented my research to my parents, and I convinced them that I would get my ears pierced. So things like that I've always been this way. I do my research first and then present that to my parents, and they decide whether they allow me to do it or not.
Well, it's funny you said that, because while you're telling this story, I was wondering what your parents were thinking. I know a lot of parents listen to this podcast, and it can be really hard to navigate when your child has a dream like this and wants to take a leap of faith. What were they telling you?
About
you leaving and taking the leap of faith and going to this community college. They didn't know where it was,
I think they have always trusted me. I think that's how they raised me throughout my childhood. I'm not trying to make a sad story or anything, but like when I was in elementary school, I got bullied for being feminine, being gay, or whatever. So I didn't want to go to school. So they let me not go to school, but I think I was always communicating with my parents. Like this is better for me because of XYZ. So I would always try to bring something that could be as equally as good as going to school. Like I would practice cello, and I will do this, and
you still have a plan, right?
Yeah.
Gosh, bullying is something I don't think we've talked about on the podcast in a long time. It's something a lot of men, or young boys rather, experience. Like, how do you think that shaped your own experience in dance? Obviously, you're saying like the arts provided a sort of respite from that side of things. Like it was a way to escape, a form of escapism, right? So, how do you feel like now looking back, like how do you view that period of your life where you were coping with the bullying?
I think I was able to cope with it because I always knew what I liked. So like you were just saying, like escaping in a way. But I knew what I was good at that those bullies can't not even compete with.
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess that kind of tough mentality. I'm not saying like I wasn't crying or anything. I was very emotional and I was crying all the time. I was such an emotional kid. But like I always knew there was something for me that I could feel myself and safe, whether that's dance or play music.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I know,
Yeah.
like my experience obviously was so different than what you guys are talking about, but I remember being bullied. Like some of the kids like would be like, "Oh, you go to ballet," like the boys would be mean in that way. But I do feel like I had that same feeling too, where it's like, well, I'm doing something kind of important. Like I have this other path in this place that makes me feel safe, and there's other people like me. And so I'm not equating it in the same experience, but I can see how you would feel that way.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, like in a way, I wouldn't say that to myself back in the day, but like
Mhm.
I was kind of delusional. I felt like I was able to achieve anything if I wanted to.
That's good. Confidence.
Yeah.
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 Yeah,
It's
confidence, I
important when
guess.
you're young, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, like being able to believe, yeah, in something. Yeah.
Yeah.
hmm
Mhm.
So let's go back to Texas. You're in Texas now. What was your experience like working there? And then what was the next jumping point for you?
So so after transferring to the university in Texas, some Houston State University, I did my BFA program and I got my BFA there.
Mhm.
Um, that was I had a really really great time because the professor who invited me to go to the school, he had also just founded his own company. So while in school, I was able to perform for his professional
Nice.
company, and which was also really important for someone who comes from overseas, uh,
Mhm.
Mhm.
like for visa
Your visa.
purposes.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
um, like for example, like having I would say like a internship professional experience before graduating university. Um, so as an international student, you get this 1 year period called
Mhm.
OPT, where you can work within your major.
Mm.
So I was able to work uh, right after I graduated. And during that time, I had to apply for my artist visa. Um,
Right.
Mhm.
but having those performances, like performance experience, already, I think that really helped me getting my visa approved.
Mhm. That's something we haven't really talked about much on the podcast either. I'm not even sure how we've skirted around that somehow, but the
Yeah.
visa, the stuff that you guys have to go through, because right, the
Yeah.
artist visa is as I understand from some of our friends who did it, you have to like quote unquote prove that you have exceptional ability, right, to be
Yeah.
here in this country doing like dancing. So I remember people writing newspaper articles and press coverage, like stuff like that, right, to like submit and prove. And it's a huge process, right?
Yeah, for sure. Like ever since I started dance, I had always saved all the programs, the
Mm.
physical
Mhm.
programs, any articles with my name on it. I had saved everything. So by the time I applied for my visa, I had a stack of
Oh,
documents
nice.
that I could use. Yeah. So that, like, knowing that information, like when I was 18, really, really helped me. Yeah.
Mm.
Mhm.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
want to just touch on one other thing that while you were talking about your higher education, I'm thinking, what about the language for you? What was was your English really good before you came here? Like you're doing your whole education in a completely different language.
So I definitely struggled.
I'm
So
sure.
when I during my first year in the States, where I was at the A school, I didn't really have to do any like regular academics or anything.
Mhm.
So like I
Sure.
was able
Yeah.
to get by, but to succeed in the regular undergraduate
Right.
program, I definitely, yeah, struggled. I used to stay up until like 2 a.m., 3 a.m. just to write. I guess it's in my like first semester or two.
Mhm.
I just to write a 2-page paper. Like I would
Mhm.
pull out all-nighter, and
Yeah.
that was a regular thing to do for sure. But I got used to it by the time I was a senior and I graduated. But I would say the hardest one was going to grad school for my MFA.
Wow.
That was on a totally different level.
Yeah.
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 And again, I stayed. Yeah.
Where did you go for that?
So actually, I went back to the same university.
Oh, okay.
So between my undergrad and grad school, I think I had like 7 years in between. So during that time, I had worked in Texas for 2 years, and I joined this contemporary ballet company in Minneapolis, Minnesota, called James Soul Ballet. I spent 4 years there, and went back to Texas, and I started my grad school back in 2019.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Good for you. What made you want to do that?
So, grad school, right?
Yeah.
So after dancing with James Soul Ballet, I actually retired from dance once.
Mm-hmm.
My body was hurting. I always had a really bad back issues.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, it was time for me to quit dancing and get a more stable, like financially stable job.
Mm-hmm.
So back in 2018, I stopped dancing and went to school for, I don't know if if you've ever heard of UX design. It's user experience design, typically like designing like software or like apps interface based on a user research.
Oh,
So I
wow.
went to boot camp school for 3 to 4 months, and I got a job at this digital marketing company for car dealerships. And so I got the job. I was happy at first, but I wasn't really into cars, to be honest.
You got to take the first job that comes, though,
Yeah. Yeah. And that year was also, so I got married back in 2018 to my husband, who used to dance together in Minnesota.
Okay.
We actually left the company together, but he was a Canadian citizen, so he had to move back to Canada. But I stayed in the States because I had my green card. So that was our first year not living together, and I had my new career, and I didn't have any time to just move my body in general. I was really busy, so I wasn't happy at all, and I was like, well, I really have to go back. But my back can't handle, like, especially contemporary anymore.
Oh, no.
So I was trying to figure out the way to go back into like getting involved in the dance community again.
Right.
And maybe like a year before I quit dancing, one of the professors from the university reached out to me that they had this assistantship available as a TA. So, but back then I guess the time wasn't right, so I couldn't do it. I think because I had to finish my contract or something. But I wasn't ready for grad school back then. But then afterwards, I reached out to her again and, hey, do you remember?
Right.
Yeah, about the assistantship that you were talking about before. And so that's how I was able to go back to school as a grad student. And it was really great because it's still the same school.
Mhm.
So I was familiar with the people there, but also having 7 years in between, their program also grew so much.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think that was the perfect time for me to go back. And
Right.
yeah, I did my grad school, struggled so much, a lot of reading and writing for sure, not sleeping at night. Yeah.
Mhm. But it's led you to where you are today. So,
Yeah, exactly,
yeah.
exactly. And I
So,
loved, yeah, I love being in school. I love studying. I love learning new things. So yeah,
Yeah.
that was
Mhm.
great.
mhm. Well, let's get into exactly how you first became interested in the idea of joining Le Ballet Trockadero, or more familiarly, lovingly known as the Trocks.
Yes.
Like, what made you, once you finished grad school, then are you just like, okay, I want to get back into a company. What are my options? How did you get
Yes.
interested?
So my journey was, I think I learned about the trucks back in 2012, like watching videos on YouTube.
Mhm.
Um, and I think I saw their show the first time in 2013. Uh, and I was interested in auditioning back then, but I didn't really have my residency, like my visa stuff secured.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't really bring myself to try.
Yeah.
Also, my technique wasn't as strong back then, but I did have a pair of point shoes.
Yeah.
So
So,
yeah,
so point training was something that you were interested in, or experimenting with at the very least at that point, because obviously it's an
yes,
integral part of what your everyday life is now,
yeah.
and it's not something that everyone you know does before they get into the company, I imagine.
hmm So when I first went to Texas, my ex-boyfriend back then, he had a pair of point
Mm.
shoes. So I saw it. I was like, I want to do that too. And I got my first pair, and I actually used that first pair for more than a year. I didn't even know what dead point shoes meant. I didn't know what it felt like.
uh,
Um, so yeah, I was kind of like on and off playing, in point shoes or sometimes taking classes. But when I joined James Soul Ballet, I was able to, they let me perform in point shoes for some of their performances.
Oh, fun.
So during my time at James Soul Ballet, I was able to do some point work and learn some more. But still, like, it wasn't enough to be able to do classical,
Rep.
like Swan Lake or like
Right.
Sophie or Paquita.
mhm,
Uh, not at all. But when I went back to grad school, I was able to explore in areas that I was more interested in. My school wasn't really a ballet based school at all. We have a really strong modern program, but not a lot of the students are ballet dancers. So like most of my like research and stuff in grad school, it wasn't like not ballet related at all.
Mm.
But for my independent study, I was able to explore some point work, and
mhm,
I practiced four variations from Padoka.
mhm,
And that's one of the very iconic ballets from Ballet Trocadero.
Mhm.
mhm,
So I got to do that, and I wasn't really gonna go back to dancing full time. That wasn't my plan.
mhm.
My
Mhm.
plan
Right.
was to, after getting my MFA, I would apply for university teaching positions as a professor. Um,
Mm.
but I still wanted to dance. I love dancing. So I decided to give myself one last chance to dance full time. And another reason Trocadero was perfect for me is because, like I said earlier, I wasn't able to do contemporary anymore because of my back,
Right.
which I did for so many years. And I couldn't really partner anymore. I couldn't really do press lifts and stuff. But I had some experience in Point, and I loved Trocadero. So I thought I should audition.
Right. Can you tell us a little bit
Yeah.
about the identity of the company? It's so unique among companies in America. And I'm wondering, for some of our listeners that might not be familiar with Trocadero, like what's the kind of rep you do? What's the vibe or style of the company? If you could just give us some insight into the identity.
So the Trocadero, we are a comedy ballet company, all men. So all of us do both male and female roles. That also means we also do point work for sure. So we do make fun of traditional ballets, or maybe sometimes the traditional culture of ballet as well,
right?
As we perform. But still, we respect the arts. All like we love ballet. We respect ballet.
You're making fun of it with great technique.
That too. But yes, like we take ballet very seriously, and we all respect how female ballerinas traditionally have been approaching ballet. So yeah, like making fun at the same time, we are still trying to respect. So the typical rep that we do, so we usually have 3 acts in our shows. First act usually is a white romantic tutu ballet. So typically we do act 2 of Swan Lake or Les Sophies. And so that's our act 1. And for act 2, we usually have smaller ballets, some balancing parody ballets, Dying Swan, another very iconic Trocadero ballet. Yeah. And some parodies like Don Quixote, Tarantella, those things. And moving on to act 3, we do a little more grand ballets that are more suitable for act 2 as a closure, like Paquita for sure, Walpurgisnacht. What else?
Wait, that's good.
Raimonda's Wedding. Yeah.
That's so good.
Comedy being at the core of the company's being, is that something that you had a knack for before you joined, or is that something that you really had to kind of learn on the job?
So, okay, this is another thing that's really good for me to tell, I guess. I love comedy. I love stand-up comedy and stuff. But I never really consider myself as a public speaker. Like I have gotten much better at it, especially after going to grad school, like having to do presentations and stuff. But I was never a person to speak in front of people. But I loved comedy. But I was always good at making faces. So that came in really handy too. So I would say I don't really want to say I'm good at comedy, but
it's natural for you.
Yeah.
I had always loved doing comedy and making faces. So this came a
natural.
little more natural. Yeah.
I'm
Is that
thinking,
something? Go ahead. I was going to ask about the audition process then. Like, how do they know that that's something? Obviously, that's really important. You can't. I mean, maybe you did just take class, but they have to have some sort of idea that you'll be able to
personality.
perform in that rap. Yeah, the personality side of things. How did they know? How did they know you were a good comedian?
I actually don't know if they knew. But the audition process was reaching out to the company, emailing your resume, your photos and videos and stuff.
Mhm.
And then you get invited to their company class. So you take class with the current company members. And yeah, I don't think I was asked to demonstrate anything
Mm.
comedic. But I think typically like they can guide you.
Sure.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And if you have some, natural taste in comedy, I think that can be appreciated. Or, sometimes you do too much and like you can tone it down a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
This is making me think of when we did Robin's the concert. We
Mhm.
the coaching was just so specific on the timing because it's just making me think it's very similar kind of thing, right? There that something funny happens and you have to nail the timing, So what's the coaching process like to help you guys make sure that you hit all those beats and that the audience is really getting the moments?
So some jokes have been set already from whether it's years back or maybe last year or someone did it and they liked it. But some jokes happen in rehearsal too.
Mhm.
Oh.
Yeah, but they definitely have specific direction as to you can take this much time, but maybe not this much time.
Mhm.
Yeah, because I think
Yeah.
the nuances in comedy is very, very subtle. And
Right.
sometimes it varies depending on the audience too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
How much is the audience like how much do you feed off of that energy that they're giving you? It is like stand-up comedy, right? Like where you
yeah,
can you do have to have that you have to be able to be in the moment and see what's clicking or not, I guess, right?
Yeah.
yeah. I definitely feed off of the energy of the audience for sure, for
Yeah.
sure. And like for me, especially, I have been doing Joke Swan in Swan Lake for about a
Mhm.
year. So Joke Swan is one swan in the core who gets to be a little more crazy and and gets kicked in the head and have to like fall down on the floor, which I have a
Fun.
blast. Yes. But even though those jokes are set already, sometimes depending the audience, I have to change, not changing the joke itself, but how I execute the jokes. Like, do I want to make this gesture a little bit bigger or do I want to
Mhm.
take a little more time? So I definitely make those artistic choices within reason for sure.
Sure.
Yeah,
Right.
based on the audience too.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. So touring is obviously such a big part of what you do. I mean, you guys are just always on the road. I feel like you go pretty much everywhere in America. If you live in the States, like you're probably within a year, like, within a 100-mile drive of a Trocks performance. So, as you guys are really traveling all the time. There's something I think is pretty cool that's happening this year. It's the 50th anniversary, but you'll
Yeah.
be returning to Performing Arts Houston, which is an organization that presented you on the very first year of the Trocks ever existing. So that's pretty amazing. Like, what's your touring life like, and being able to go back to these places that the company has touched on for years and years now?
Well, first of all, it's really great being able to visit places that I have never been to before.
Mm.
Like for example, like Estonia, Lithuania, Denmark,
Mhm.
like
Wow.
the UK, all these places I had never been to. So that's definitely one of the perks of being a truck for sure.
Mhm.
But also being able to visit places where that I have someone that I know,
Mhm.
like from,
Mm.
you know, like for example, when I performed in California, my very first roommate in New York City from 2006, like she was able to come see me.
Wow.
Yeah,
So
and like
cool.
those places, and me coming from Japan, like especially like I never really went home as often as I wished.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
maybe like every 3 years or so. But
Oh, wow.
when COVID happened, I think it was like the longest time that I hadn't been home.
Yeah.
I don't think I went home for about 4 or 5 years, not seeing my family, parents at all. But when I
Wow.
joined Trocadero, which was uh, 2022, spring 2022, my first tour with them was Japan.
Japan. Wow.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah. So all
Yeah.
my teachers, my family members and friends, they were able to, yeah, come see the show. And
So special.
Mhm.
yeah,
Oh,
When you think about it, it's like a really beautiful moment too, like full circle moment. Like
mhm,
just going back to your childhood and feeling like, you were bullied for this thing that, you did that actually ultimately made you exceptional. And now you get to go back and share that. And it's like a full circle moment where you're triumphant and,
mhm.
those moments of pain or difficulty as a child end up being so worth it.
Yeah, yeah,
mm,
Yeah.
indeed. Also like having like spending time with our colleagues, it's great. Like you, it's it's really rare that you actually love spending time with your colleagues,
Hmm.
yeah.
right? But
Totally.
I think we are a almost like a family.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we get to, explore together and find good food together and eat together.
So fun.
Yeah.
Oh, well, just for our last question, I feel like we're contemporaries, and Michael and I retired around the same time you did your first time. And so I just
Mm.
wonder, for you to kind of have this second life in dance and have this new career at this point in your life, what does that mean to you?
That means, so it taught me that I can still improve
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
because I am 35 right now, and when I joined, I think I was 33, about to turn 34. Uh, but I didn't really think that you could improve something at this age. I'm sure like people who are in their 40s, 50s, they're probably like, no, you're a baby, you're still in your 30s. But
Right.
but I didn't really feel that way. But coming into such a very unique environment and the style of dance, including, doing point and dancing like ballerina,
Mm-hmm.
it
Mm.
taught me I can still try, and and that still pays off.
Mm-hmm.
Like there will be an outcome. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
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 Wonderful.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. It was so wonderful having you on. And we hope that everyone that listens to the podcast will check out the Trocks website because you guys tour so much. As I said
Yes.
previously, I'm sure that you guys will be coming to a town near all of our listeners.
For our listeners that are in Houston, we hope that they will definitely come out and see you at Performing Arts Houston on Tuesday, January 23rd, 2024. Oh my goodness. Just right around the
Wow.
corner.
There we go.
I know. Thank you
Oh,
so
well,
much
thank
for
you so
joining us.
much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank
I
you.
really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Conversations on Dance is part of the ACAST Creator Network. For more information, visit conversationsondancepod.com.